In this video, we're going to go from being able to display our API like this to actually creating an interactive interface that uses different paging using routing in React and uses axios to pull from our API to display on the page. Hey guys, welcome back to a new episode of DevJor. Today we're going to be continuing our React app using a PHP API. So in the previous video, we built this API based on a MySQL database. We just have simple items in it. So if we go to /items, we can see that there is some dummy content that's in there, and I just went ahead and added that through the database directly. But as you see in the previous video, you could actually add that through like a curl call. So we're going to start integrating React into it. So we have to install React, and then we're going to use Axios to grab this information from this JSON, and we're going to run everything where we have the front end and the back end. Let's get started. All right, so first let's create a new folder, and we're going to call this front end, and we're going to open up a terminal inside of this folder. So we still have our PHP API running in the background, but we're going to open up a new terminal inside of this front end code, and we're going to use Vite to create the React app. So we're going to do npm create Vite at latest. And we're just going to put it inside of the folder that we're currently in. And then we're going to do template React. And then we have to run through the installation steps. So we're going to proceed here. We're going to select a React framework. And let's use TypeScript for this. Okay, so now everything has been set up, so we need to follow the instructions here. And we're going to do npm install, and we're going to let it run through its installation of everything that needs to be created inside of this React application. All right, so now we have it running. So we also are going to be using React router DOM so that we can actually navigate from page to page, and then we're going to be using axios. So let's do npm install react router DOM and axios. Axios is going to connect to our API, and the React router DOM is going to create a the router endpoint, so our pages for us. Okay, so now if we look inside of our front end folder here, we can start running it. So if we scroll up a little bit, we can see that we can do npm run dev. So let's do npm run dev, and let's copy this local URL, open it up over here. So now we can see that our application is live on our development server. And this is where we can start kind of setting up our folder structure. So inside of our front end source folder, we have all of these files. We're going to create a new folder, and we're going to call it components. And then we're also going to create a new folder in here, and we're going to call it API, because we want to have where it actually hits certain API endpoints. So I'm going to get rid of some of the other stuff that we do not need in here. So, well, let's go ahead and create a styles folder as well. So we're going to do styles, and I'm going to take this app CSS and I'm going to move it over here. And of course, it's going to, some of the things that I do is going to break this screen, which is fine. So just bear in mind as I'm kind of cleaning up the folder structure that we're currently looking at. So we want to keep our main and our app, and we don't need the CSS folder here. Then we want to keep our index.html. Okay, so now that should clean it up. It didn't break it like I thought it would, which is good. I'm just checking to make sure that it's not using anything that's weird. So let's take this and actually, is it broken? It is broken. All right. So we're going to take this and we're going to move it over to styles.app.css. And in the main, we get rid of this index.css. So we don't need that. There we go. So now it's kind of formatting it a little bit more basic, which is what I want. You can use the styles that they have if you want to, but typically for something like this, I just install like Bootstrap or MUI or something like that to kind of work off of. But let's go ahead and set up this router so we can start doing some paging. So inside of our app TSX, we are going to let's get rid of some of this stuff that's here. So let's get rid of these two because we don't need those. And we'll just keep the div, and then we can also get rid of this text that's in there as well. Okay, so now we have our basic functionality completely blank slate for us. So let's keep the styles app CSS just for now. So let's do import browser router as router routes and route, and that's going to be imported from the React router DOM. And you can see over here all the imports that we're currently importing, they're being unused. That's just because we haven't used them yet, but we will in just a second. So let's go ahead and build out our router. So we can actually replace all of this code because we are going to be wrapping it. It's not just going to be inside of HTML. We're going to be wrapping it inside of a router. And then inside of this router, we're going to eventually have a nav bar. So I'm going to go ahead and put the nav bar section in here as well. And I'm just going to comment it out for now. And then let's do div class name, just put it as content. And then inside of this, we're going to do our routes. And we're going to have, let's just say like a home page, an about page, and then an items page, which the items page will be pulling from this items JSON. Right now, we don't have any of those elements added, but we'll add those in just a second. I just want to kind of show you how it's set up. So we're going to do route, and then the path is going to be equal to this for the home page, and then we're going to display the element, and we're just going to make it equal to home, which again we have not declared, so it's going to break it. And then I want to do the same thing for our other pages. So let's say we got our home page. Next, we're going to do an about page, and this is going to be /about, and then we're going to do an items page, which is going to have the items list. So inside of this, all of this should be working for the most part. So if we go to about, it's working. It's got the router. It's just it doesn't have any content to display because there is no content currently available. So inside of our components folder here, let's create a new file, and we're going to call it home.jsx. Or actually, this should be tsx. So let me rename that to tsx. And then a new file, let's do about.tsx. And then a new file, let's do items.tsx. Let's go ahead and throw in our nav bar in here too. So let's do navbar.tsx. Okay, so now we have these files that we're going to be using. So since we already kind of added the nav bar here, let me just uncomment this out, and let's go back a page. Okay, so we're going to build out this nav bar so that we can use it. So let's click on our nav bar, and we're going to do import link, and this is going to be from the React router DOM. And let's create a function nav bar. and then we're just going to return a nav that we can put at the top of this page. So let's do nav, and for right now let's just do a simple list of home. I just want to right now show you how to do the reusable component. We'll go in here and add the actual functionality to it in a second. That's not users, this is about, and then the last one is going to be items. Okay, so that's what we're going to structure it to look like. And let's go ahead and put a semicolon there, and then we're going to do export default nav bar. Okay, so now if we go back over to our app.tsx, we can come over here, and now we can import our nav bar from the components nav bar, and it'll actually fix the error that was happening there. And if we refresh over here, currently can't see anything, probably because we're not importing the other items. So let's go ahead and build out the home, about, and the items. So in our home.tsx, we're just going to create something simple, and we're just going to do home, and this is just going to return h1, and let's say this is a sample React app. And then at the end of this, we're going to do export default home. So inside of our app here, let's go ahead and import our home from the components home. And I'm just going to copy this over for the other pages as well. So we got our about and our items. So let's just change this and this to be about. And this is a, let's do our about page. And then I'm going to copy this over as well. Actually, I've already copied it, so let's just change this to items. And this is our sample items page. Okay, so now inside of this, we can import the other things. So import about, and then import items. So now we have our navigation is here. This is the home page. If we go here and do about, this is our about page. So you can see the content is changing over here. We're going to style this in a second so it doesn't look so weird. And then we're also going to make these clickable links, which we can do now inside of our nav bar, because we're not currently using the link. So we're going to do link, and I need to make this capitalized up here. So we're going to do link to, and we're just going to make that go to the home page itself. So as you can see here, if we click on this, it goes to our home page and it changes to the home page content. So now let me copy, or actually let me do this. So I can do them both at the same time. And then this is going to go to our about page, and then this one is going to go to our items page. So about, items. All right, so let's go into our app.css and let's get rid of the stuff that they have in there, and we're just going to do something simple for the nav. So let's do nav, and then we're going to do background color. Let's just do, to make it simple for now, all right, so now let's do nav ul, make it display flex, and give it a gap of 20 pixels, and list style none. Now nav ul lia, let's make those color, let's just do white. There we go. And let's get rid of the text decoration, make that none. Let's do, take this, and we're going to do the hover state for it, and let's give it a text decoration of underline. All right, there we go. And just for our content, let's just give it padding of 20. And again, this is just something that is just for right now, just to kind of show you how it works. We're actually going to be using MUI to add styling to it as an actual framework. But just right now, I'm just trying to show you what it looks like and how we can actually make it kind of do what we want it to do. Okay, so now for this page here, I don't want it to just say this is a sample items page. I actually want it to display this content. So we're going to start working on that part of it. And we got this API folder here. So inside of this, let's create a new file called API client dot. Let's just do TS. So we're going to do import axios from axios. And then we're going to do constant API client equals axios dot create. And inside of this create, we're going to set our base URL to match what this local host is. So this localhost 8000 over here. And we're going to send over the headers. The content type, and we're going to make that application JSON. So application JSON, then we're going to, it's not header. I was wondering why that little red thing was there. It's headers. Okay, so we have our content set up. So let's do export default, and we're going to do API client. Okay, so now we kind of have our connection set up. So whenever we go to actually run the users, we will be able to connect to this this API client that we've set up. So not users, items. I think whenever I was building out my sample application, it was referring to users, but that's not how I have it in the database. I have it as items, so you can kind of set it up however you want to set it up. Okay, so let's come over here, and we're going to have to import a few things. So let's do import use effect, and then we're going to also use state, and we're going to import that from React. Let's also come down here and import our API client from, see if it'll autocomplete for me. There we go. From API/API client. Now we have our function items. So inside of this, we're going to set up our items to be pulled. So let's set up a constant. It's going to be users, and we're going to do set users, and this is going to equal to use state, and that needs to be in parentheses. So now we have the basis for how we're going to get the user, or how we're going to set the users based on the state. So let's go right here, and we're going to use effect. And inside of this use effect, we are going to pass in a function that is async. So async function, and we're just going to call it fetch items. Why do I keep saying users? Let me change this again. That's not what I want it to be. So set users changes to set items. And we're going to create a function. It's going to be called fetch items, and then we'll call that in a second. So let's set up a try catch. So try, we're going to set up our response. So constant response. Close this so you can see better. So constant response is going to be await API client dot get, and our users is going to be, our items is going to be based off of this slash items. So we're going to do slash items. Hold on. Constant response equals await. There we go. And then we're going to do set items, and then this is going to be equal to response dot data. And then we also want to set up a catch here. So we're going to do catch error, and then we're just going to do a console.error. Let's just say error fetching items, and then I want it to display the error. Alright, so now since we have our async function here, let's go down, and now we're going to do fetch items. And inside of this use effect, we want to pass in a blank object, or else it will break our application. So right now it seems like everything's working, so now we just have to display it. So let's take this h1 and we're going to put this inside of here. So let's do a blank div, and let's just title the page items, and then let's create a list item, and we're going to do items.map and item, and then how we want it to display. And we have to pass a key because it is React. So let's do item.id. I think there's an ID associated. Yes, so there's an ID associated with it. So we're going to do item.id, and then we're going to do item name. So item.name, and we're going to pass that inside of our li. And I did something weird here. What did I do here? Oh, this is not supposed to be a curly bracket. So this needs to change. Okay, what is it saying here? Property ID does not exist on type never. Let's see what we're actually getting for our items. Let's do console.log. And we're just going to do items. See what we're actually producing here. So it's not producing anything from the array. Let's see. That might be the cause of that. Localhost 8000. We're grabbing our items here. Okay, so there is an error because it's being blocked by cores. So it is actually trying to hit the endpoint correctly. Now it's because I had two slashes in it, so there was a slash here and then a slash here. So I don't want that to happen. So what I need to do is actually set up the, we need to add some cores cross-site scripting stuff to our API to prevent this from happening. So let's do that now. Alright, so in order to fix that, let's go back to our API, and inside of our index.php, you see we just have like basic routing available. So we're going to set it up so that it actually handles cores. So let's come down here, and I'm just going to add a comment here, and we're going to say cores middleware to allow requests from local host 8000. So inside of this, we want to set our app, and we're going to add a function that's going to parse or use a request. So we're going to do request as request, then request handler interface as handler. And then for this, we're going to do a response. Make sure I'm typing that correctly. Get rid of that. Okay, so let me see. We're going to add the function. We're going to pass in request handler interface handler. And then this is going to be our response here. And then inside of this, we're going to do response equals handler handle request. and then we're going to return the response make this a little bit easier to read. So with header, and we're going to add in a few with headers. So we're going to do, first one is going to be access control allow origin, and we're just going to paste in our localhost 8000 here, and that should give us our first header. So our second header, we want to have multiple options for it to do. I'm just actually going to copy and paste this for now. So we're going to do, instead of allow origin, it's going to be allow methods. And since this is going to be a fully functional API endpoint, so we're going to do a GET request, a POST request, PUT request, delete, and options. You can modify this to kind of be whatever you need it to be, but for right now, that's kind of what I need it to be, just for this. Oh wait, hold on. Wrong endpoint. We're trying to hit ourselves right here. So we're going to change that to localhost, whatever was spun up in our React app. So this is going to allow our site to hit the API endpoint, but we still need to pass in the authorization. So let's do this. Instead of allow methods, I'm going to switch this over to allow headers. Get rid of this, and we're going to do X requested with content type accept origin, and I think the last one is authorization. Okay, so now have that, we have that, and let's put a semicolon here because it is PHP. So we have the core's middleware, so we also have to kind of sort of do the same thing using the pre-flight request. So I'm going to copy all of this down one more, and instead of core's middleware, we're going to do pre-flight requests for, yeah, let's just do pre-flight request. Okay, so we're going to get rid of the add here. We're going to change this to options, and then we're going to pass in the routes. So basically whatever we send to it, we want it to be able to parse. So we're going to tell it that we want it to parse that, and then for this function we're also going to pass request, but we're not doing request handler interface. We're going to do response here, and then finally args, because that's going to be part of our API call to it. So let's get rid of this response because we're already passing the response. And now we can get rid of this, and let's do return response with header, allow access control origin, and we're just going to make it everything right now. And then we have our methods that are going to stay the same, and then our allow headers are going to stay the same as well. And then finally, at the end of this, we're going to do with status, and we're going to do 204 because there's no content. Let me put a comment here. So 204, no content for pre-flight response. All right, so let's test that out and see if it does anything different. Okay, so I did a refresh, and I see that this request handler interface, which is being mentioned right here on the API, it is not, it has not been declared. So what we need to do up here is take this, and we're going to add in the request handler interface. And then also, if we refresh this now, this server, sorry, HTTP server, not message. Okay, so now if we refresh this, it should show. This part still isn't working because it says over here that the origin does not match. So if we look at it the way we have our origin here, it has the slash on the end of it. So if we remove that slash and refresh again, now we have our items that are appearing. So essentially, you need to make sure that your access origin is actually pulling from the server that you're pulling it from. If you are running this on the same server, you most likely won't run into this issue. But if you're trying to call your API, so you have your API set up on one server, which would probably be the best way to do it. If you have your API set up on one server and then your app running on another server, you need to make sure that you can access your API directly. Again, if you're on the same server, so if it's like API.yourdomainname.com and this is yourdomainname.com, then it most likely won't matter, but this is just something that you may have to use. Now with the other things on here, we are eventually going to be using most, if not all, of these options. So just kind of, you have to set up your cores to kind of go how you want to use the app. It may not necessarily be set up like mine, but it should be pretty close. Okay, so going back over to this items, it still says that the item ID and the property name does not exist on type never. All right, so typically I'm developing in JavaScript, so TypeScript handles it a little bit differently. So we actually need to declare the interface that we're using. So this use state right here needs to change, and then we also need to declare the interface. So TypeScript is very type oriented, so it needs to have specific declarations for things. If this was JavaScript, it would work just fine, but with TypeScript we have to do something like interface item, and then we're going to do ID is going to be a number and name is a string, and then we're going to, instead of just passing this use state, we're going to do item, so use state item, and then we're going to pass in the blank object as it comes through. So now that error is gone, but if we go to do something, let's see, we have a blurb. So we have this li item name. Let's add in a break tag here, and then do item.blurb. And again, it'll work, but obviously we get this type error again. So we need to come up here and add in blurb as another string. And then that'll make it where the error goes away and it displays our content. So let's get rid of our console logs. We don't need that anymore. Okay, so this is basically, I think I'm going to end this chapter here, because this is pulling information from our database the way that we want it to. We have our routing set up. We have some rudimentary design going on here. What you could do for something like this is, you know, as you see here, whenever you go to refresh this page, there's like a slight blank here. So if you wanted to, you could set up something like a loading state. So you can do constant loading, set loading, and then we can set it to use state. Let's just say, let's just do true. So up here, before we can do this, we can do something like, let's see, loading. How do I want to do this? So let's do if loading equals true, then we just return loading items, and that way it'll show like it'll show a little blurb here before it loads the items. So what we need to do here is we have our set loading here, and it's being set as true initially. We want to come over here, and as soon as it gets done, we want to do set loading and then just pass in false. so that way it knows that as soon as it loads the items, so you got loading items and then the items appear. Yeah, that's fine. I was gonna take this and move it up, but that's fine. I'm not really too concerned about that. I'm just trying to show you the loading state versus, you know, when it's getting the items versus whenever it's loading, so it doesn't have that initial blank screen. It just shows loading items and then it loads it. But I think that's going to do it for this tutorial. In the next tutorial, I plan on going to, let's see, what are we going to do in the next one? So this is episode 4. So episode 5 is going to be where we actually handle like authentication, like session management, stuff like that. So you won't be able to view this stuff unless you're actually authenticated, which would also play into the PHP that we have. So we'll set up like an auth token or something like that to actually make it where you can't load any of this until you have that authentication token, whether it's an API key or whatever it is that you want to do. But for right now, this is the front end of it, and we're just listing it out, and everything looks great-ish. But it is working, so stay tuned for the next episode. If you have any comments or concerns, you know, definitely leave me a comment below. And I'm trying to do these videos as quickly as possible, but you know, work. So I gotta do work first. So whenever I can, hopefully it is not going to be a month or two before the next video comes out. Hopefully it'll be a week or two. So just give me a chance to do the next video. But for this one, I think I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks for watching, and I will talk to you later.